everybody, I'm teething right now. I can't stop eating my fingers. Can you guys hear her little lungs? She got a little daycare cold from Choo Choo. But she's still so happy and the best baby, and she's just dealing with it like a champ and just strengthening this immune system of hers. Right? You're getting so big. Say hi, everybody. I just love you guys. Who is she with this ponytail? I was really going for like Ariana vibes, and then the more I look at myself, I feel like I'm like Phoebe Buffay when she like gets the record deal and does the Smelly Cat music video. Also, why is every reference in my life pretty much Friends or 90s pop culture? I'm stuck there. Hi guys. Happy Wednesday, my loves. How's your guys' week going? Mine feels like it's dragging, and then everybody I talk to is also dragging. And it's the beginning of the week. I'm filming at the beginning of the week. So I can't even imagine how I'm going to feel on Wednesday, today, for you guys. I just feel like it's been ages since I've seen you, and I just miss you so much. If you're new here, it has been ages since I've seen you, like the whole existence of your life so far. But hi, hello, welcome. I'm so glad you finally found me. If you're not new here, welcome back to our True Crime Wine Wednesday. You guys probably noticed I changed up the background a little bit. I was really inspired by the thumbnail of my teacup case that we did a few weeks ago. I was like, oh my god, I'm really loving those like Marie Antoinette teacup vibes. I know. Before I even get into the case, sponsors, all that stuff, I just want to say thank you to all you guys. The channel has grown so much this past week. We are over 30,000 subscribers right now. And every single day, I'm reading new comments of new people coming, and they're so excited to join the fam, and I'm so happy you're here. Okay, I think it's time for you to go find Papa. Say bye, everybody. I'm going to go keep chomping on my hands and go see my Papa. Say bye-bye. All right, today's case is one that I had never heard before, and I don't think there's a single one that I've ever researched and talked to myself out loud more than this one. I went through all of the emotions. I went through anger, frustration, so much sadness, horror, it's got all the feels. And it's one of those cases for me where I just have taken it very personally, felt very connected to the victim in this, and I know that I will never forget this case. I'll never forget her. If you're new here, you probably haven't gone like way back into some of the older videos, so you might not know what Jurassic Jail is. Basically, what it is a theme park that I think should be started, and it's like the real life version of Jurassic Park, but you know, like instead of like hoisting the little lambs or like cows and stuff to feed the velociraptors and the triceratops, we do that with these criminals, these murderous monsters. You know, just strap up one of these mother effers, hoist them down, and just see what happens. The monster in today's case, she has got a one-way ticket front of the plane. Like first one on, first one off, out there to our jail. Before we get started though, pre-recorded Sherrilyn would like to thank our sponsor today. I want to give a huge thank you to Small Town Murder for sponsoring today's video. You guys know I love a good puzzle game, and this one is too fun. If you guys haven't heard of it yet, it's a free crime and mystery game from the creators of Angry Birds, which is super cool, and it's already got 5 million players hooked. You play as aspiring murder mystery writer Nora Misty. She reminds me of a very fiery, younger version of Jessica from Murder, She Wrote. Whoa, did I ever age myself there. As Nora, you're trying to solve a string of murders that are going down in this quaint little idyllic town of Thornton Grove. And your job is to investigate the crime scenes, search for every piece of evidence within them, and then solve these brain-teasing puzzles to unlock your clues. Seriously, so addicting. For someone with a very short attention span, I love that it keeps you on your toes, introducing you to over 50 new characters, taking you to hundreds of different locations. There's over 2,000 pieces of evidence to find and over 3,000 levels to conquer. There might even be a little room for some romance for Miss Nora. Ooh la la. If you guys want to check it out and unleash your inner detective, I have the link for you in the description below to download Small Town Murder for free in the Apple Store or on Google Play. I know you guys are just gonna love it. Thank you again, Small Town Murder. Okay, let's get started. Grab your drinks, grab your snack, grab whatever you've got in front of you. Hold on for dear life. You're about to be fuming by the end of this. Today's case starts in Belcourt, North Dakota on August 9th, 1995, when Norberta and Joe Graywind gave birth to a baby girl named Savannah Marie LaFontaine Graywind. Savannah was the oldest of 4 children to the Graywinds. She had 2 brothers, one named Joe Jr. and Casey, and a sister named Kayla. When Savannah was young, the family moved to Fargo, and that's where she primarily grew up. And then in 2005, they moved to Spirit Lake, where she was a member of the Spirit Lake tribe. Reading about Savannah made me feel so connected to her. I felt like I really knew her. I think one reason is there's a lot of similarities to her and I. It's kind of like when we talked about when something happens on your birthday and you are like, oh my God, that's my birthday. Sometimes it's like great because it's like someone's born on your birthday and it's a wonderful event and you're super excited. Other times, like what we don't like on this channel is when something terrible happens on our birthday. It's just like the worst. But it makes you like feel connected to the victims. Even if something happens in your city, you know, like there's just like that bond there. And so for Savannah, like things like our dads had the same names. She's the oldest of 4 siblings, as am I. She did volunteer work with the elderly. I had done that in my younger days. It was just very easy for me to relate to her, and I felt like I just kind of wanted to like put her under my wing. With her being the oldest sibling, it's kind of puts you in this role of giving you more responsibilities. You're kind of looked at as like an additional caregiver, and it almost naturally forms you to have these like very maternal roles and instincts. And it was something that Savannah seemed to love. She absolutely adored children. Her parents have described her in interviews as very nice, caring, just super loving. She loved horses and all types of animals. Family, above all, was absolutely everything to her, though. She just sounded like she was absolutely wonderful, and even just looking at photos, I felt like she just like had this like magnetic draw and just like pulls you in. Like even for me, looking at her pictures, her kindness and positivity just absolutely radiates. I can't even imagine what that force would have been like in person. Savannah went to Warwick High School, where she met a boy named Ashton. He was a freshman and she was a sophomore. I don't know what that is in Canada grade schedule. I've always been curious, so let's figure it out together. Oh, very interesting. So a freshman, everybody from the US, you guys have to let me know if at grade 9 you start like high school. Is freshman in high school? Because it says it's grade 9. So for us in Canada, that's still junior high. Junior high is grade 7, 8, and 9. And then high school is 10, 11, 12. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, you start high school in grade 9 as a freshman, then sophomore grade 10, junior 11, senior 12. So for any Canadian folks out there, it sounds like Ashton was grade 9, Savannah was grade 10. Ashton said that one thing that drew him to Savannah was her soul. It was like he could just feel that radiation and just like her aura. And even at a young age, you know, being in grade 9, he understood the importance of having somebody like that in your life. And he knew how wonderful she was. He wanted to date her right when they met, but the problem was Savannah was 16 and her parents had a rule that she couldn't date until she was 18. You know, they wanted to keep her protected. They knew what was floating around all those hormonal teenage brains. So initially they kept their relationship on the down low. Ashton said that he would drive to go and visit her, just like park down the block, and she would sneak out of her house and go hang out with him. As time went on, though, her parents started loosening the reins, and they wanted to meet him and set that expectation of what the rules between them were and make it very crystal clear. Hearing her parents talk about that first meeting with him made me laugh, because it's absolutely probably what our girls are going to go through. They sat him down at the table, and Savannah's uncles were even there with her dad. I just go to the bad boy scene because Brent always references that. He's like, I'm going to have all the uncles at the table. We're going to be scaring the bejesus out of this kid to make sure they take good care of our girls. And Savannah was so mortified that she hid in her bedroom the entire time. But I guess Ashton held his own. It went really well. They loved what they saw. And from there, the relationship was permitted. They dated throughout high school. And in 2013, Savannah graduated. And the following year, in 2014, she received her certificate for nursing assistance. She started working at a nursing home in Eventide. I need to get it right because I mispronounced Sevierville. Texas in the Shane Lavera story that we did. I appreciate all of you guys for correcting me. I really thought I had it, so I just kept calling it Sevierville. But like, are we really surprised that I just like went rogue and just thought like, I'm nailing this? So I got to get this right. So in 2016, Savannah went to work at a nursing home there. She then made the decision with her family to move to Fargo so that she could further expand her education and career opportunities. Her career goals absolutely fit the personality that she seemed to have. She really wanted to take care of the elderly, and her family really wanted to support her dreams. And so they decided to move to Fargo with her and move into an apartment all together. Her and her boyfriend were still together. They were still together. He was often on the road, though, because he was working construction. It sounds like for the majority of their relationship, they were just kind of used to being apart for like longer periods of time, and they just did what they could to make it work. They talked every single day on the phone, usually multiple times a day, and they had done this for like 6 years. They were so in love, so one day they were just like, you know what? Even though we're young and, you know, people might think we're crazy, let's have a kid. So at 22, Savannah got pregnant, and when they told her family, everyone was really excited. This was such an emotional time. They were going to be grandparents for the first time. So she stayed living with her parents because Ashton was still on the road working, and they absolutely doted on Savannah. Anything she needed, she had, whether it was food being delivered to her on the couch, her feet being rubbed, her back, her belly. Her parents were there to make every wish of hers come true. In August 2017, she's 8 months pregnant and starting to get really excited about that final stretch. She's not getting out and doing too much. If you've been pregnant, you can probably relate. You know, like at the end of it, you're just like nesting, getting everything organized, not wanting to go out and walk around a whole lot. So on Saturday, August 19th, 2017, when there was a knock on her apartment door, Savannah was home. The complex that she lived in with her parents was like a smaller one. I think there was only like 3 levels, and it just kind of looked like almost like a big house. Not a lot of units in it. Savannah and her parents were on the main level of the complex, and the person at the door was a woman named Brooke, and she was on the top level of the apartment. Brooke Cruz was 37 years old and definitely had her share of experiences in life. She was born in Sparta, Illinois to her parents David Cruz and Paula Green. She grew up in Florida and has described her upbringing as quite difficult and troubled, but is not willing to further elaborate. She wasn't making the greatest decisions in life, and by the time she was 23, she was arrested for writing bad checks. Once she was released, she was then re-arrested for violating her parole. Savannah and her family knew of Brooke. Like I said, it was a small complex, so they would see each other in passing, but they weren't friends or anything like that. So I'm sure when she came to the door around 1:30 p.m. and Savannah answered, she was probably just a little bit like, oh, like, hey. Brooke asks her if she can pay her $20 to have her try on a dress that she's, I guess, sewing for a project. And Savannah, just being the like sweetest ever and just wanting to help anyone she can, she's like, yeah, I'll give you a hand. She tells her she'll be up in a second and just give her a minute, and she tells her parents that she's just going up to try this dress on, and her parents are like, okay, sounds good. As she's leaving, she makes a comment that I'm sure like all of us have made, you know, being true crime connoisseurs, if you will. She's like, you don't think she's like a psycho or anything, do you? And her mom just giggles it off. She's like, no, I'm sure she's fine. I mean, they're home. They knew she was going up there. That's absolutely fair to assume. When Savannah goes upstairs, her mom leaves to run an errand and her dad stays behind. About an hour goes by and she comes back home and she doesn't see Savannah in the apartment. So she goes to her husband. She's like, hey, did Savannah come back from going upstairs? And he's like, no, actually, I don't think she did. So he goes up to Brooke's suite. He knocks on the door. Brooke answers and he's like, where's Savannah at? Brooke says, oh, she already left. And Joe's like, to go where? Because she's not down there. Brooke says, I'm not too sure. She told me she was going back downstairs. And Joe's like, nah, she's not there. I'm going to need to look in your apartment. And Brooke like blocks the way and she's like, no, you can't do that. Joe turns around, goes back downstairs, says to his wife, something's wrong, we need to call 911. It's around 4:30 p.m. and Savannah's mom calls 911. She says that her 8-month-old pregnant daughter, 8-month-old pregnant? Idiot. That makes no sense. She says that her daughter, who's 8 months pregnant, is missing, and by 5 o'clock, the police show up. They get the lowdown of what happened, head up to Brooke's apartment. This time, she lets the police in. When they go in, they see she's not alone. Her live-in boyfriend, William Haney, is also there, but they don't see Savannah. The police officer looks around the unit, checks all the rooms, doesn't see or hear anything out of the ordinary, so he goes back down to Savannah's parents' unit. He just says, sorry, I didn't see anything that caught my eye, nothing suspicious. The only person that's up there right now is her boyfriend. The police leave, and Savannah's parents, they're just sitting sick, waiting. They know she wouldn't have left. She left her phone, she left her wallet. Being 8 months pregnant, she's just in absolutely no mood to just be gallivanting around the neighborhood. And if she was, she'd probably come and check in with them before she went on like a walk. By the 9-hour mark of them not hearing from her parents call the police again. They run over the same story, and they're like, at this point, you're just expecting us to believe that she's literally just vanished. The police come back to the apartment unit. They go back up to Brooke's suite. They're like, you just have to understand this is really a long time for a woman who's about to give birth, practically like at any moment, not to check in with her family or be seen or heard from. Brooke and William are like, yeah, we get it. So again, they let them back into the apartment. They check all the rooms. They're not seeing anything suspicious. They leave, go back, tell Savannah's family, there's still no sign of anything up there. The next day, detectives are brought to the building, and they're doing like a full canvassing of the area. They know wherever Savannah is, she didn't leave in her vehicle. She would have had to start out on foot because her car was still there. They search the entire neighborhood, ask all the neighbors if anybody saw her. Everyone they talk to says they've seen nothing. For a third time, they go back up to Brooke and William's apartment. Again, nothing. Then by this time, they call in her boyfriend Ashton for questioning. He had just arrived in Fargo not long before. He tells the police that he was out of town when Savannah went missing. He was in Grand Forks, which was about 80 miles away, house sitting for his mom. The police say that Ashton was very cooperative. He seemed like he was willing to help. He provided anything that he could to just give them all the information that they needed to find her. And when they followed up with his alibi, everything checked out. So then they were back to square one. Her family decides to reach out to the news to try to get exposure, see if anybody had seen Savannah. And like so many of these cases, there are a bunch of people that think they saw her walking. One person called in and said they thought they saw Savannah with another individual at a store, but that didn't turn out to go anywhere. And then a tip is called in, and somebody says they thought that they saw her get into a red truck. When the police ask her family if they know anybody that has a red truck, it was almost like a flashback that her mom had. It wasn't a very important conversation, but just like a casual mention that one of her neighbors on the second floor had with her, and she mentioned a red truck that Brooke's boyfriend William had that he had pulled up to the back door. The police decided this time, instead of going back up to the apartment and just like having another gander, they want to bring William in for questioning. They start with some small talk, and then they get to the afternoon that Savannah went missing. And William says that he came home. When he got there, Savannah was there trying on a dress for Brooke. He said he walked in the house. Brooke was like, "Hey, honey, this is our neighbor Savannah." He's like, "Cool, nice to meet you." He says he goes to the bedroom to get out of his work clothes, starts to unwind from his work day. He said he fired up his computer because he just wanted to go on it and chill. He said he started up the shower, jumped in, and he said it was while he was in the shower that Savannah's dad had come to the unit, asked Brooke about where Savannah was, so he didn't even know that that had taken place until after he came out, and when he came out, Savannah wasn't in the apartment. During the interview, they also ask about the red truck, and they find out that it actually wasn't his, it belonged to his boss. He said he had only just recently borrowed it from him and that he didn't have it when Savannah went missing. So nothing seeming too fishy. He's very cooperative, and so he's allowed to go back home. The police go to follow up with everything William said, and they find out that yes, the red truck did belong to his boss, and his boss said that he had lent it to them recently because he and Brooke needed it because they had just had a baby. The police are like, "Okay, cool. Baby? What baby?" And his boss is like, they literally just had one. There's several detectives on this case. And, different police officers had been up to the unit. So they go back to their notes to see if anybody had mentioned seeing a baby. And they're like, yeah, nowhere in these reports did anybody see a baby. There was never a baby mentioned by Brooke or William. And I mean, they had him in the station questioning him for 2 hours and nothing was said. Instead of jumping the gun, though, they didn't want to go back to the apartment and jump to conclusions. They thought, okay, maybe the boss, there's potential that he could be confused. So they just want to run surveillance on them, see if they see them with a child. Their thoughts were, we'll just do this for the remainder of the day, and either we're going to see them with a baby, and that could potentially be Savannah's baby. Maybe it's Brooke's baby. Maybe there's no baby at all, but they might see Savannah, and they could have taken her somewhere to hide her other than their apartment. And if they're surveilling them, then maybe they would lead them to Savannah. By the next morning, though, there's no sign of a baby, no sign of Savannah, and they know time is of the essence. It's been 5 days at this point. So they go back to the apartment for a fourth day. It's on August 24th. Another case where you're just like, oh, it's my birthday. You have no permission for bad things to happen on birthdays. When they get to the apartment this time, though, it's not as easy it had been in the past to go in and search it. Brooke and William had the door to their apartment. They had the door to their apartment blocked with their couch. So the cops were like, no worries, we got an app for that. Well, not an app, but they had a batting ram. So they just knocked the crap out of the door and just crumbled it to pieces. They get in and again, they start searching every room. There's several officers at this time, and one of them makes his way to the master suite. He's looking everywhere, not really seeing anything. And as he's turning to leave the bedroom, he catches a motion on the bed. He goes over to check it out at the head of the bed, and in between two pillows, swaddled like a little baby burrito, is a newborn baby girl. The baby is rushed to the hospital to be assessed, and a few officers stay behind and go to Savannah's parents' apartment. They let them know what they just found. But they say, we can't jump to conclusions. You can't see this baby until we've done an assessment, run DNA, and everything that we need to prove if this is Brooke's baby or Savannah's. They told them that just because they found a baby didn't necessarily mean it was Savannah's, because they didn't find Savannah. Savannah's parents are like, what baby? No one even knew this broad was pregnant. Naturally, their mind is going to, if this newborn is our granddaughter, where is our daughter? How, where, when did she deliver? The police upstairs are asking Brooke, whose baby is this? No offense, but she's got jet black hair. You or your boyfriend don't. She's got this beautiful darker complexion. Both you pasty asses don't. I love how I just went for their pastiness and I'm just the pastiest. I really want to get a tan. Brooke's response to them is pretty much how dare you ask me whose baby this is? How freaking rude of you to ask such a thing when my pregnant neighbor is missing and I was the last person to see her and everything. I don't know if she expected them to be you know what, that's fair. Completely uncalled for on our part. Carry on. But they don't. They bring Brooke in for questioning, and they also go and arrest William at his job site. Brooke's demeanor is basically I don't know what you want me to say or do. I've told you everything. All I know is that she left my apartment at 2:45 that afternoon, and I didn't see her leave with anybody. To my recollection, she just told me that she was going back down to her parents' suite. So if something happened to her from the 3rd floor down to the 1st floor, I'm not aware of it. Over in the room next door to her, her boyfriend's being questioned. This time, though, he looks at the detectives and he says, okay, at this point, it's CMA, man. When I read that, I was for f***ing sakes, now what are people trying to abbreviate? The police felt the same. They were just no mood to try to decipher his code. They're what is CMA? He said it stands for cover my ass. AKA, I'm rolling over on Brooke. And he tells them he came home from work and she had produced a baby and to not ask him any questions. Back in Brooke's room now, she's changed up her story and she says, okay, Savannah gave birth in my apartment. And when she delivered the baby, she just handed her to me, told me to take care of her, and that she didn't want her. When I say that I could not be a detective because I would slap a bee, my blood is boiling. Like past the point of steam screaming from a kettle. I honestly had to contain myself because watching her interrogation on my laptop, I wanted to like snap my laptop in half. The police were like, stop. It's so infuriating, so embarrassing. But she's got no shame in her humiliation game. She just sticks to the story and literally thinks that at one point they're gonna believe her. By that evening, word had started to spread around the city. Everybody was talking about what could have happened to Savannah. And at this point, they're feeling that she's out there somewhere. So everybody in the community rallied to find her. There were like hundreds and hundreds of people all trying to cover as much ground as they possibly could, but for a couple days they don't find anything. And then on the 8th day of her missing, there were some kayakers that were on the Red River, and they come across what alarmingly looks like the shape of a body in plastic, and it's caught on a log. They immediately call the police, and when the police arrive, they discover Savannah's body. You guys know I don't like going into detail. I feel like the point can be made without getting too graphic. The way I'll describe her condition, though, is just heart-shattering and monstrous. It was obvious to the police looking at Savannah that she had succumbed to injuries from an at-home C-section being performed and her baby being taken from her. It doesn't take long after she's discovered for DNA results to come back, and they just prove that the baby that they found in Brooke and William's apartment was Savannah and Ashton's little girl. At this point, Ashton is finally allowed to meet his beautiful little baby girl who weighed 4 pounds 11 ounces, and he said for that entire day he just stared at her for hours. Like he didn't even want to blink and look away for 1 second. Oh, I can't imagine how tough a situation like that would be. You know, you realize that the love of your life, the mother of your daughter now is gone, and then in the same breath you have these emotions of holding like your brand new baby, and that in itself like brings out joy. I can only imagine like what struggle that would have been, like just bouncing back and forth from just like heartbreak to happiness. Once they got the DNA results back, Brooke and William were charged with conspiracy to commit murder and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Both of them entered a plea of not guilty. While they're waiting for trial, a local journalist is tipped off that movers are in Brooke and William's apartment and they're taking stuff out. So he goes in there, he starts sifting through everything, and he comes across a bunch of books and notepads. This is very interesting to me because I don't know why like those things ended up in a journalist's possession and nobody went to the apartment to like gather what they could for evidence for a case against them. I feel like I've seen cases where a search warrant to go and retrieve things in somebody's home has been granted on like much less evidence than having the baby of a missing pregnant woman who turns up murdered in that person's house. I don't really know the backstory behind there and why this journalist had it, but he ends up with all these notebooks, and within them, it's pretty much just lists of what you need to basically be a midwife or have like a home delivery. There was a lot of supplies, things like gloves, scissors, a stethoscope, clamps, Pitocin. For anybody who doesn't know what Pitocin is used for in deliveries, it's usually used when doctors want to induce a labor or when they want to like strengthen labor contractions to deliver a baby. She also had electric suction on this list, oxygen tanks, laughing gas. Initially, the notes looked like it was Brooke and William preparing for their own home birth. There wasn't anything in there to give indication of a premeditated plan like, you know, find pregnant woman. For quite a while Brooke is waiting for her trial, detectives keep going to visit her. They're trying to press her for more information. They obviously know that her story of Savannah just handing her this baby is bullshit. And this move pays off because she decides to change her story. She doesn't just come out and say, you know, like, I did this, I'm responsible, I planned this. But she starts with saying that her and Savannah had gotten in a fight that afternoon and that she had pushed Savannah and she had knocked her head on the sink and went unconscious. Unconscious? Every single time. Why is it that words sound weird to me lately? Hey, Suri. Do you guys love that Suri just goes, to me now? Somebody mentioned that in the comments in the last video and I died because she's just like sick of my shit. She's like, what the F do you want now? Hey, Suri. How do you pronounce unconscious? Suri? Hello, Suri? She's just given up on me. Hey, Suri? Hi. How do you pronounce unconscious?
Okay. I found this on the web for how do you pronounce unconscious. Check it out.
I think I had it. Okay, thank you. Okay, just go fuck myself. That's gotta be bad when Suri's over you. Thank you guys for staying here, you know? She says she's not really sure like how all the events took place, but the next thing she knew, she had a knife in her hand and she says it was me who cut her to retrieve the baby. She didn't just give her to me. No, shit, she didn't. She also comes clean about lying to William for months. She had told him that she was actually pregnant. She went as far as making doctor's appointments up, like writing them in their calendars with dates and times and locations. She printed out ultrasounds that she found online, just like the most over-the-top stage 5 clinger stuff. It's believed she started this because she wanted to keep William. I guess in January of that year, he had already previously left Brooke and went back to an ex-girlfriend of his. So when they got back together, she figured she was going to prevent that from ever happening again. And she thought the best way to do that was to say that she was pregnant with his baby. There was one huge issue though, and that was that Brooke had had her fallopian tubes tied. William apparently was aware of this, but at one point in their relationship, he had expressed that he still wanted to have more children. So not long after he says that, Brooke says that she booked a procedure to have the surgery reversed, pretends to go through all these appointments, has an operation, recovers from it, and then what do you know it, a few weeks later, she's pregnant. Now, don't you leave me, because I'll find you. This actually seemed to work for quite a while because William, from that point, was solely focused on Brooke and making their relationship and family work. And initially, in those first weeks and months, everything's good. But it's like as the clock ticks on and 9 months get closer, you're like, oh, I have to produce a baby and I don't have one. Well, she didn't have a baby. She did have children though, but she wasn't involved in their lives. It seemed like her having babies was her way of holding on to relationships. One of her first boyfriends said that when they first started dating, it only took about 3 months for her to suggest that they have a family. And he was still in that like lust honeymoon phase. So he was like, you know what, probably a little bit too fast. Not the ideal situation, but I like you. I want to be with you. Let's go for it. They had a daughter together. This was actually her second daughter. She had had a child from the relationship prior to this one, but she wasn't like the most present with that baby. I guess everything for that boyfriend and her second daughter seemed to be going well, for the 2 years of that little girl's life. He was like, okay, we definitely made a good decision. But then when her daughter gets to like that toddler stage, Brooke just ups and leaves the relationship. She marries the next guy that she ends up with, becomes a secretary for the business that he owned. She was living that cushy, wifey, boss babe biz. They have 2 children together. They're married for about 3 years. And then old patterns just repeat themselves. She checks out, ups and leaves. This happened another couple times until she ended up with 7 children. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's a large number, but it's irresponsible when you ghosted all of them. Not too long before she met William, actually, she had left a relationship to follow a guy that she was cheating on her partner with to move to Australia with him. They got married. I think it lasted for like 6 days. Then she came back, and that's when she met William. He also had his share of issues from what I could read. When he met her, he had convictions of child neglect and abuse, and he also had 2 children from previous relationships that he didn't see. I don't want to judge, but just like probably not the best decision to just like want to have more babies. They both didn't have stability. Brooke was bouncing from job to job. She went from working in a nursing home to working at a dollar store, back to to a nursing home. And it's unfortunate because she had all of the potential in the world. A couple years before she met William, she was accepted into Minnesota State University, and she sounded really smart. She was taking courses in things like social behavior, psychology, theory of knowledge, and directed research, and apparently her grades were quite high. One thing I found interesting about learning about the journalist who had read through some of her notes was that it seemed like she was definitely working through some mental illness issues. I don't know if that's what led to her not finishing up school. It sounds like she had really high anxiety, stress, PTSD, but within her journal, she made it very clear that she did not want to be medicated. Her words were that just because she had these conditions, it didn't make her evil and she didn't need to be medicated for it. And when I read that, I didn't really know how to process it because I guess I've never thought of medication as acknowledging that mental illness makes you evil. For me personally, who has almost exactly the same diagnosis as her, I had gone through a period of time quite recently. We've talked about this in videos, like 6 months ago, where I also was like pushing going back on medication, but my thought process in it was because of a failure. I felt like I couldn't beat it on my own. So that in itself, I mean, there's absolutely no excuses for what she did, but it just made me realize that I guess everybody interprets like their own mental illness differently. So I just wanted to just take a quick minute and just let you know, like, if you feel like that, you're not alone. I went from being on medication for 15 years to stopping when I had my second daughter, and I tried to cope on my own with meditation, praying, working out, taking CBD, doing all of the things. But at the end of the day, I just had to acknowledge that, I mean, those things, they help a little bit as far as like making you feel good, but when it's actually like a chemical imbalance and you just cannot produce enough that's needed to sustain you, there's just circumstances where you can't, like cure yourself. In my mind, accepting that I needed more, I looked at it like I was a failure. And I know the misconception of mental illness, making people believe that they're broken or unstable is so outdated, but it's still something that's very present. I get messages from you guys every single day just thanking me for being open about mental health and for creating like a space where you feel safe, and I can't tell you how much that means to me. I actually haven't even scratched the surface of like what I've been through. There will be a day and time we go through it all, but in the meantime, I like sharing where I can, when I can, and I'll never stop that, because if I can just make one person feel less alone and understood, like, it means the world to me. I can't speak for Brooke, but just reading about what she went through and then just comparing it to other stories and cases that I've read where there are like denials in acknowledging somebody's mental health, it just doesn't usually lead anywhere positive. It looked like in the beginning with her, the abandonment and like bouncing from relationship to relationship was her coping mechanism in this like wall that she put up. On the outside, it also looked like her pattern was when her children weren't babies anymore and they were getting a little bit older, that was when she was just like, okay, like I gotta go on to the next one. So it's those things that they're just like not the best life choices, especially because she owed, even just to one baby daddy, over $13,000 for child support. So then like you just like continue adding more children to it. It's like that like causes stress that you're just not even acknowledging, and it's just piling up. It's just overwhelming to think about. And then when you digest how one person's decisions and actions can alter and affect a complete stranger's life and their family, that stuff just like I just kept thinking about the day Brooke told William that she was pregnant. Everyone's life who knew not only her and William, but Savannah's was changed at that point in 9 months. In December 2017, before Brooke's trial, she decides to change her plea from not guilty to guilty. She was given a life sentence without parole. For Savannah's family, it was a silver lining because it saved them a trial for Brooke, but unfortunately, William doesn't do the same, so they still had to go to trial for him. During his trial, Brooke was brought in to testify as like the star witness. Because of her sentence, there was no deal or anything like that. Like, she was in there, no chance of parole. So I guess prosecutors felt like having her there was going to make her story more believable because she had nothing to lose. She said that William was fully aware of the plan to take Savannah's baby. Her story is that when he found out that as the days was approaching that she's supposed to have this baby and that there wasn't one coming, he he lost it. He hit Brooke and he said, "I've told everybody we're having this baby. You need to produce a baby." Brooke said he told her that Gray Wind girl is pregnant. And so she took it as, "I don't care what you do to find a baby, you find one. And here, there's one right in our building. Take hers." Her version of events was that once she attacked Savannah and the baby was delivered, Savannah had passed out. She said William came home around that time, opened up the bathroom door, saw Savannah, asked if she was still alive, and Brooke said she wasn't sure. She said at that point he went to retrieve a rope. He left the bathroom and said if she was then, she isn't now. When William testified, he said that he didn't even know that Brooke wasn't pregnant until the day that Savannah had disappeared. So there was no conversation of him saying, "You told everybody that you were pregnant, you need to find a baby." He said that that never happened. His story is that he was at work. When he came home from work, Brooke opens up the bathroom door and says, "William, I need your help." He said before he can even ask her what's going on, he hears a baby crying. He said he goes to the bathroom, he looks inside, and it's just a catastrophe. His version is that he just kept repeating what the F is going on. And then he said he just went into fight or flight mode and started cleaning up the crime scene with Brooke. He said anything that was used in the crime itself or afterwards to try to conceal Savannah's body was things that were already purchased and waiting at the house that Brooke had bought. One thing that is so devastating is that after Savannah was tarped, she was hidden in a bathroom closet. So that means that on that first day when her dad came to look for her, she was there in the washroom. When the police went to look around the apartment unit, she was in this closet along with her baby, and no one ever noticed. Savannah's body was actually in the apartment on every one of the searches until that last and fourth one. And the baby was also in there. They said that on the second one, the baby was hidden in blankets and like laying beside William. And when they searched the apartment on August 20th, they had hollowed out a dresser of theirs in their bedroom, and then they put Savannah in there. And then it was that third search, they were like, okay, we need to move her body from our apartment because they're not going to stop looking. I guess what they did was they just acted like they were moving this dresser, loaded it into his boss's truck, and then drove her to the river. William's sentence irks me. He was found not guilty of the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, but he did plead guilty to conspiracy to commit kidnapping for helping to hide the baby after the fact. The judge sentenced him to life with the possibility of parole, and I just don't know how I feel about it. I guess in terms of the law, there really isn't any evidence that he had any knowledge of what was going to happen. Brooke has also admitted that he didn't partake in the actual event of stealing Savannah's baby, but I definitely felt like he knew what was going to happen. Like I said, there really wasn't anything for Brooke to lose by testifying at his trial and sharing her story on the stand, so I was more inclined to believe her version. I still think she's a piece of garbage, but I trusted her story more than I did his. The silver lining in all of this is Savannah and Ashton's beautiful baby. Her name is HAISLEY Jo, and Ashton and Savannah's parents are raising her together in like joint custody. Their daughter's name is the name that Savannah picked for her, and I guess her middle name, which is Jo, is her father's name, and he actually didn't know that she had picked this out. It was going to be like a surprise for him, but she had shared it with her sister. So when she shared that with the family, oh my god, I was an absolute mess, like hearing about her dad learning that for the first time. I can't imagine like what that emotion would have been like. The family updates how everybody is doing and how HAISLEY Jo is quite often on a memorial page for Savannah on Facebook. They see HAISLEY Jo as a gift that Savannah left for them. It's really like heartwarming and then just devastating, and makes you like sad and angry and happy and sad all at the same time going there, because it just makes this even so much realer to see like these are real people, this is a real family. But I feel like it's really important to, you know, go and check those pages out and send your love and support any way you can, because it keeps their loved one's memory alive. So if you guys want to follow up and go and send the family some love, I will leave the link to that page in my description for you. I'm sure you'll definitely feel like I did, you know, like reading through everything. I kept finding myself going like, oh, you know, like at least HAISLEY Jo is still here. here. Thank goodness, you know, the family has her for Savannah to live on. And it's like there should have never been an at least scenario. That baby should have her mom and her dad. Her parents should have their daughter. What happened was so gruesome. Like, and for what? To trap a dude? Oh, so gross. Just, she's the worst of the worst. Like I said, like first plane out to Jurassic Jail, she's on it. Another reason why I really wanted to cover this case was a really important issue, and it's a question that the family and so many other people had, which was how did those 3 prior searches for Savannah not turn up anything, not her or her baby, who we now know were in the apartment every time. The family feels that because they are Indigenous, they weren't taken as seriously. They thought that the police had already just, you know, had their guard up, were checked out, so that when they went up to the apartment, it was just like a, hey, you know, let me just like take a quick look and I'm gonna leave thing. As much as you don't want to believe that this happens, it's something I see in cases constantly. It's something Indigenous people have said for years and years and years. And quite honestly, until recently, with everything that's unfolding with the residential schools, finally now their voices are being heard and being taken seriously. But prior to these unmarked graves being found, anytime that was brought up, nobody believed them. And I guess actually to go even deeper than that, not even that nobody believed them, but there were people of authority and who were in power who knew that it was going on and just turned a blind eye to it. As awful as it is to accept and acknowledge, because you just don't want that to be like a world that you're living in, I believe the family's absolutely right in feeling that way. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to bring attention to Savannah's story. It's just facts that missing and murdered Indigenous women do not get the attention and coverage that they deserve. And actually, William's sentence was appealed and it went from life to 20 years. So he'll eventually be released. I mean, I can accept that it wasn't his plan. I fully believe that it was like Brooke's plan. I read that only 2 cases of, it's called fetal abduction, has ever been men who have planned and carried it out. And I don't think William is the 3rd. But just his admission, keeping up with the lies, preventing Savannah's family from finding her, like it's just sickening. This dude didn't run for the hills. Like he was just cool playing house with somebody else's baby that his girlfriend had killed for. Like eat a dick and die, dude. Really curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Like, do we feel like William was the one who was like produced the baby because I told everybody we're having one? Or did he really not know and Brooke just did all of it on her own? My love and prayers are with Savannah's family and her baby girl. There is a GoFundMe set up for expenses for raising HAISLEY Joe that Ashton started. It's hard enough being young parents, let alone just being a single parent, losing your partner in such a horrible way and only having one income. So I'm going to leave that link in the description if you guys also want to check that out. That's it for me today though, you guys. Thank you so much for coming by and watching. Thank you again to our sponsor, Small Town Murder. Make sure you also check out that link in my description so you guys can head on over to the App Store and play with me. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. You know it means the world to me. I love and I appreciate you so, so much. I will see you in the next video. You know I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.